てんのか。
Hi guys. That's good.
Hi, I think the government side is ready, so we'll now start the model debate.
Okay.
Sure.
エアコンの温度下げたぞ。暑くなるぞ。
熱くなるぞ。
そう。
いいよ。We say this debate is about what constitutes personal happiness, right? And we say that the strong narrative of do what you love has pressurized individuals into a certain mold and harmed them. And this is why we're very proud to propose, right? First, starting off with our model for today, we say that this debate is about jobs and life choices and therefore not about free time, right? And we say that under this debate, there's a general consensus that never under whatever narrative, people must never harm others in the process, right? So for example, frat boys that love to, reckless drive or psycho murderers that love to kill are out of this debate, right? There's also a general consensus that doing what you love most of the time does not equal, a stable, good paying corporate job, right? It most of the time means that people want to pursue their risky career of, artists, sport players, or entrepreneurs, right? And we also say that we're talking about if you are a middle-class person or just graduated high school, for example, and under this dominant narrative, which is a widespread mindset, we say that these people are sort of pressurized to have a passion and follow it regardless of the consequences. And we say that this sort of situation is what this debate is about, right? So given that, moving on to our first argument for today, which is protect happiness of individuals. And we say that this narrative has been harmful for individual well-being. And we're also going to be talking about how the world would have been better without this sort of dominant narrative. 3 layers of analysis in my point today, right? First, I'm going to be talking about the problems we see in the status quo. We say that because of this narrative of do what you love, imposed through things like glorified success stories of people like Michael Jordan or J.K. Rowling or Steve Jobs, for example, right? Or even just movies and fictional storylines like La La Land. We say that the idea of pursuing your dreams, not giving up and making it as a result has been idolized and praised, right? And so we say that as a result of this, many people have come to chase their unrealistic dreams, regardless of the consequences. And what's important to note here is that we say that maybe around 0.1% of these people actually succeed, right? We say that these success stories are an extreme minority, and most people are just chasing thin air when they pursue these sorts of careers. And we say that there's 3 harms here. Number one, we say that 3 sorts of harms here. We say that number one, people might be unemployed, right? And we say that this is harmful for the individual as well as the family and friends and the people around them, right? Number 2, we say that even if in the case that they're not unemployed, they're stuck with a low-paying job and therefore have, debts and financial stress in their lives, right? So for example, the typical actor trying to make it in Los Angeles, right? They're waiting tables, cleaning pools, and working weekends all the time, all while going to auditions and trying to gain their success. They're barely hanging on. We say that this is harmful because of 3 reasons. Number one, we say that there's a constant mental burden that comes from the financial stress of trying to succeed, right? And not getting the sufficient success that you want. Number 2, we say that it breaks all social relations within one's life, right? Because there's no time for family or friends, and this leads to things like tension, divorce, etc. And number 3, we say that there's pressure for young adults to find and have a passion in the first place, right? You're made to feel less if you don't have a passion that you're, constantly pursuing. So for example, we give you the example of like high schoolers or even渋渋英, right? You're 16 and you're constantly being asked what your dreams are or what you're going to pursue as a major or career. Like we're supposed to have our next 20 years planned out in some way, right? And we say that people who have these sorts of passions are praised, and therefore it puts a societal pressure on these young people. Second layer of analysis in my point, why these problems are uniquely harmful as a result of this dominant narrative of do what you love, right? 2 points here. Number one, we say that for these individuals that do decide to pursue their dreams, their motivation comes from wanting to succeed and wanting to be like these idolized figures, right? And feeling like a failure if you're not a certain way. And we say that this sort of inner pressure leads to individual like pressure and that they place on themselves, right? Second point here, we say that there's societal pressure to, I'll take you later. There's societal pressure to, be seen as doing what you love, and you're seen as weak and afraid if you're not pursuing this single path, right? A third layer of analysis here, we say that individuals would have been happier without this narrative, right? Opposition might bring up a point about how pursuing your passions will bring you joy, but I'm going to be explaining how doing what's realistic is actually a more successful and happier life for an individual. And we say that without this narrative, what individuals' lifestyles would look like is that more people would have, the typical job of lawyers, banks, working for companies, etc. And therefore, they would have a periodic stable income. And this changes two things. Number one, financial capability. And number two, as a result of that, we say that people have more time, right? And this is important because their quality of life changes in three ways. Number one, there's no financial stress. So people have access to basic needs that are necessary to lead a good life, right? So for example, food, housing, healthcare, for example. And we say that this also provides less stress because you're not constantly worrying about, whether or not you have food for the next day. Number two, social life. We say that people have more time to invest in spending with people that surround them, right? Family, friends, and this leads to emotional fulfillment and support. Number three, we say that this increases perspective, right? We say that individuals are able to increase happiness through pursuing what you love as a hobby instead of a career, right? My partner will also be expanding on this, but we say that the moment that people turn something into a duty on your to-do list, they lose their excitement and passion for that thing. And we say that because of this, individuals would actually be much happier doing what they love on the side. And in our world, people would be comparatively be able to keep their passion or love for what they do. I'll take your point if you have it.
Under your traditional success model of elitism, only limited number of people can get great position of lawyers and head of ministry and so on.
Right.
What about it?
We say that in comparison, there's a much more successful, first of all, we say that it's more stable, even if you're not, a head of a company. And number two, we say that the likelihood is extremely different whether you're in a ordinary company versus Hollywood, right? Okay, so moving back to my point, we say that your individuals are also able to broaden their perspective and gain more opportunities because instead of feeling pressure to feel like you have to have a single path that you want to follow, which limits perspective, we say that there's an increase in open mindset through the loss of this barrier, right? And we say that, people are going to be more prone to the idea that your passions and what you love can change, and they feel less of an obligation to what they do. And we say that this creates a wider variety of interests or opportunities and experiences for individuals, which allows them to grow themselves as a human, right? And we say that all these points are important because it protects both physical and emotional individual happiness. And we say that as government sites do, we prefer this sort of happiness to chasing nothing for a glimmer of hope or success, and therefore very proud to propose. Thank you.
Okay, can I start?
Yep.
Yeah? Okay. The traditional success model proposed by government is elitist and exclusionary at the expense of socially vulnerable actors like women, the disabled, and the LGBTQ. In an age of content creators, micro-influencers, and small businesses, the narrative to do what you love changes the structural cause of this elitism by allowing these vulnerable actors to achieve success without relying on these kinds of elitist institutions. We win this debate because we enfranchise more people and we enfranchise the most vulnerable people in society rather than protecting the 2% elites on the government side. So before I move on to my points, a couple refutations. Firstly, government said that people have passions forced upon them and this is somehow bad. We believe that this is actually good because the fact that people receive career education from a young age means that teenagers have an opportunity to research potential careers that would expand their choices in the future and that would allow them to make better choices. This is especially important for kids with no cultural capital who haven't grown up with the role models that they can look up to. We think this allows them social mobility in a way that government does not. The second thing they said was that people chase unrealistic dreams without being pragmatic and then they fail. Note that this was a very assertive process that's based on the worst case scenario always happening. But I'm also going to be engaging with why this is good in my constructive. The third thing they said was that money is better because it makes you happy. Three things to say to this, right? The first is that money is notoriously unreliable, which is in that if you have an economic recession or bankruptcy, you're not going to get as much money, or the money that you have is not going to mean as much in the case of inflation. So we don't think money is a good thing to bank your happiness upon. The second thing is that even if you have a reliable source of money, we think money is a short-term dopamine rush, because even if you buy good things, you get desensitized to the happiness that comes from constant purchasing, and therefore it doesn't bring you as much happiness. The third thing to say is that the nature of capitalism is that needs are manufactured through advertising, so that even if you have good things, you feel like you never have enough. Therefore, we don't think that money is a good source of happiness. Rather, you should directly get your happiness by doing things that make you happy. The final thing that they said was that passions lose their appeal when it's turned into a career. We think this is ignorant of the counterfactual, which is that the counterfactual is that you spend the majority of your day in an unfulfilling job. Even if your passion is somewhat dulled by turning it into a career, we think you still have more fun when you're spending the majority of your day doing something that you actually like. Moving on to constructive. First, I'm going to be talking about why the traditional success model is exclusionary and unrealistic. Second, I'll be talking about how the passion economy, which we propose, is accessible to everyone. Firstly, traditional success model is exclusionary. Let me recap the traditional success model, which is the counterfactual that government never really talked about. The traditional success model is things like going to a top-ranked university, getting into a well-established company, like we're working for the government, being a lawyer, working until you're retired, and then getting married. We think this is a model that prioritizes socioeconomic stability above all. The context of this is that this is a rapidly dying ideal because populations are shrinking and aging, and this becomes notoriously unstable. Things like cryptocurrency and privatization have made the role of government and these large corporations and zaibatsu much less significant in society. We think even large companies like Sharp are going bankrupt. So this isn't a good economic model to place your trust upon in the first place. With that, two characteristics of this model that make it structurally exclusive. Firstly, is that it's a zero-sum model. Everyone wants the same thing, such as a spot in Todai or a spot in Mitsubishi Ginko, but these opportunities are only available to a limited number of people, and everyone else is going to fall down the ladder and be excluded from these circles of privilege. The second thing is that it advantages the privileged elite, who are the ones that gain access to these few spots. It looks like people who are living in Tokyo with the opportunity and money to pay for cram school. It looks like privileged people who do not face systematic discrimination and employment, like men or heterosexuals, receiving preferential treatment in the employment of these companies. It looks like the University of Tokyo, right, which is 80% male, like everyone's parents are rich, everyone comes from Tokyo. We think this is a notoriously exclusionary system that only advantages 2% of society. As a consequence, people like the poor, women, disabled, people who live in rural areas and don't have information, these people continue to be economically disenfranchised. This system is fundamentally flawed. Firstly, because it's a bad system that only allows success to a minority of the population. But secondly, it's an unfair system because it gives people wealth as a result of the birth lottery, and it also favors people who are morally culpable since they gain their wealth, but at the expense of exploiting or discriminating against these vulnerable people. We need to revolutionize the system in order to protect the opportunities of vulnerable people. Moving on to my second point, the passion economy is accessible to all. So the thing that we propose is the passion economy. And what we're talking about refers to the expansion of tech and the content economy, which has made it possible for anyone to monetize their passions through platforms such as YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, or having an affiliate blog. We think this allows people to have a good life while pursuing their dreams. And crucially, it's accessible to everyone instead of the privileged elite that is being protected on government side. Now, first of all, we think that the accessibility of opportunity needs to be the main criteria in this debate, right? Because this motion asks us how many people would be happier with this narrative. Thus, we're going to be telling you that this narrative provides more people with a chance to succeed, thus making them happier. Next, why do we think that the passion economy is a more accessible form of success? 4 analyses. First is that there are many platforms that are currently available, like TikTok or Twitter, and these have huge audiences, which means that there's lots of opportunities to be famous. Secondly, the scale of the platform allows for a wide variety of passions to be monetized, right? So it's not just the traditional skill sets that are valued in Japanese traditional companies. It's things like cooking or playing piano or being a beauty guru or being beautiful. We think all of these can be monetized in new ways, thus allowing for more people to monetize their passions. Thirdly, there's a low entry barrier since you only need a smartphone and yourself to make good content. Fourthly, and crucially, we think that making money on these platforms is not dependent on these conservative establishments such as universities or like companies that discriminate against minorities. On these platforms, diversity is valued and not condemned because your uniqueness makes you inherently more valuable. The impact of this it's the economic enfranchisement of people who would have been excluded under the traditional success model. This crucially includes people who are in socially vulnerable positions, such as women, the disabled, or the LGBTQ. Think about Kemio, right? He's repeatedly talked about how he didn't want to be in a Japanese traditional company because he would have been discriminated against. But now he has a massive success on YouTube because he is able to monetize his passions and he is able to reach a much wider audience. We think this is a good example of how the passion economy enfranchises these vulnerable people. Finally, engaging with government's worst case, why is this good even if they don't succeed in chasing their dreams? 4 things. Firstly is that being poor is not inherently bad. We think it's fine if these people have to resort to welfare. Second, even if they don't succeed, they're still going to be happy because happiness in doing what you love is not dependent on that thing being successful, right? We think this is different. We think this is notably comparative with what the government's talking about, is that you're only successful if you're professionally satisfied. Thirdly, is that you're still likely to be satisfied because your failure is your own responsibility. Fourthly, you can practice better decision-making and as a result, you're more likely to succeed in the future. All in all, we protect more people and we protect more important people. Proud to oppose.
Judge, what's not a crime today is individuals wanting to pursue financial and emotional stability. It's individuals that are wanting to pursue money in order to bring food to the table for their families and pay for their loved ones and their hospital bills. On side government today, we strongly believe, therefore, that a short-lived passion or a strong feeling or whatever it may be must never determine a person's life, career, and life choices. To prevent these individuals from making regrettable decisions, very, very proud to propose. Several things I want to do in my speech today, but before I get into my extensions, quickly one main refutation to the opposition's main argument about how the system in and of itself is exclusionary. 3 things to say. First, we tell you that there's been a huge problem-solution mismatch. They talk about sexist ideology, LGBTQ people, and how they're disenfranchised in society. They talk about these people living in the countryside and how they don't have equal opportunities. These are all issues that are not unique to what we're talking about today, which is this narrative, right? What instead is happening is that what instead is a solution to these kinds of issues is, for example, quotas, or maybe educating students on equality, or making sure that we have schools in the countryside, right? Those kinds of things are what's going to solve these issues, and therefore we don't really see that this as a harm. Second, they talk about how they talk as if everyone that is not a boss basically has absolutely no money whatsoever, but that is definitely not the case. And instead, what is true is that most, or basically all these people working in these big corporations, right, no matter how low your position is definitely much more financially stable than these starving artists, these people that are not like these musicians that are not selling, right? They have much more of a stable finance in life in that sense. And thirdly, even if all they've told us is true, we tell you that through corporate jobs there are transferable skills which are extremely important, right? With unemployment, all these different things exist. What happens is when you can answer to orders, and when you can work Excel and you work programs like Word, what happens is that you can later on pick up that passion, use those skills, and start your own business, etc. That being said, 2 bits of extension that I want to bring today. First point of extension: why money is a prerequisite for happiness, especially in the long term and in this modern economy. 2 things. First, or 2 levels of analysis. First, we tell you that money gives individuals a basic level of stability. Instead of constantly having to worry about when your next paycheck is going to come in, or what medical treatment, or food, what kind of meals, social outgoings, whatever you can and you can't afford. With a stable income, what happens is 3 things. First, for the first time, individuals have the emotional capacity to actually enjoy the things that are more important in their lives, right? So their social life, time with friends and family, their education. But second, through this stable income, there comes structure and control, right? Structure and control, we believe, is foundation for progress and development in one's life, right? Like a foundation of a house, without this kind of structure and control in one's life, what happens is there's no possible progress that can happen. You can't, learn more. You can't, train more for a job when you don't have the foundations of, this having a meal or having, having shelter or having a roof over your head, right? And thirdly, there's safety. Never having to experience living, on the streets, having to sell your body, having to sell drugs for the sake of having, enough money to go to auditions or to have shelter. That's the kind of thing, that's the kind of world that is true and something that the opposition side completely failed to engage with or illustrate today. And note here, we tell you that this kind of thing is extremely important in the modern economy, especially because, the housing bubble, employers, employment, ice age, et cetera. These essentials in life are growing more and more expensive in this modern economy, and therefore it's extremely important. Second level of analysis, we tell you that this is the biggest, money is the biggest enabler of choice. All our life choices in one way or another are always constrained or determined by our financial situation, right? Two layers of analysis. First, money buys time. What that means is that if you're a corporate worker, you work from 9 to 5. But what's worse is if you're, an artist, right? You have a notebook on hand, always looking to note down inspiration and having to stay up all night to finish one painting in one sitting, right? Or a small business owner, you constantly have to think of new products, update your websites, post on social media, et cetera, right? Corporate workers have more time on their hands that they can use to pursue their passions. Second layer of analysis, money also buys experience and opportunities. Right, it determines where you live, the people you surround yourself with. If you're in Hollywood, I'll take you in a minute. Hollywood for acting, you can be in Nashville for country music, etc. Without money, you can't do these things. Second extension that I want to give is about why monetizing passions in and of itself is going to make individuals unhappy. Two layers of analysis. First, responsibility. Responsibility basically takes away the joy out of passions, right? For example, you're about to do your chores, but your mom tells you to do them whilst you're trying to do them. You don't want to do them anymore. Or, sure, you can be a really passionate cook at home in your own home. You share, your meals with your family and your friends, and you like seeing their smile. But this is completely different from what the world that we live in today, where, these chefs are chained to a small kitchen all day and night, or they're not able to actually cook the meals they actually want to cook, right? And having to listen to orders, etc. I'll take your point right now.
You talk about how money is important, but what good is that money when it's only accessible to the privileged elite who are able to gain access to those institutions in the first place?
Again, as we've said, there's a problem-solution mismatch. It's something that this is not mutually exclusive or has anything to do with the motion at hand. That being said, we prefer a world where individuals make a sacrifice to achieve some level of stability in their lives, which allows them to enjoy personal pursuits and allows them to sustain the joy they originally found in their passions. Right? We prefer that kind of world, compared to the opposition paradigm, where these people will live paycheck to paycheck, not being able to afford life's most basic necessities, like hospital bills, having a shelter, having education, etc. And that goes against your point right there, right? Not having an education is something that's extremely common, and not being able to afford that kind of education, healthcare, etc. is something that's extremely common under opposition's paradigm. Because money buys happiness, we're extremely proud to propose.
I was trying to top 1%, top 40, because basically everyone in the corporate is much well, much more well. And there's also it's like so much more.
Okay, thank you, Chairperson. I would like to answer 3 questions in this debate. 1, is money really prerequisite for individual happiness? Secondly, what's the realistic characterization of those who pursue what they really love? And thirdly, can we really expect stability from government paradigm in the world? So moving on to the first question. Is money really prerequisite for individual happiness? The main assertion from Deputy Prime Minister is that having financial stability and having wealth is always prerequisite for individual happiness. I would like to give you 3 or 4 responses. 1, even in a word, I think the Deputy Prime Minister proposed very extreme dichotomy between stable regular employee versus jobless and homeless. Even if you get like even if you fail to realize your dream, you can still access fundamental basic welfare from the government, like unemployment benefit, livelihood protection, or welfare system, or insurance services. It's not like you will lose everything and you will become homeless and jobless and lose everything in your life. That's very extreme characterization of the failure situation. Secondly, subjectivity. I mean, what constitutes happiness for individual is subjective. I mean, for some people, buying time efficiently could be happiness, and having a lot of experiences is happiness. But for other people, having less stress could be happiness. For other people, having less interaction with people in the workplace could be happier situation. So thereby, if we consider the subjectivity of happiness, you can't really say the materialistic satisfaction is the paramount priority for everyone. That is a sweeping generalization of the vast majority of individuals that live in the world. Number 3, then who can get the materialistic and financial success under government paradigm? Those who graduate from prestigious university, those who can luckily pass job interview and get enrolled in McKinsey, Goldman Sachs, or the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And those are the kind of people who can access materialistic and financial success and satisfaction proposed by the government bench. That could be less than 1% or 2% of the entire population. Thereby, you are structurally making vast majority of people unhappy. This is serious because, as my parent explained, it's a matter of birth lottery. If you happen to be born in a rich family, you necessarily have better access to education. You have better information. You can have a wider range of choices in the first place. What about those who happen to be born in an economically disparate area? For those kind of people, elitism proposed by government paradigm is just exclusionary and makes a lot of people unhappy. Therefore, money is not prerequisite for individual happiness. The counter solution from the other side of the house is we can say quota for LGBT, we can educate people. Those are not mutually exclusive. With our paradigm with which diversities are more respected, we can better implement the counter proposal proposed by the proposition bench. Moving on to the second issue. Before that, I will take point from the other side. Go ahead.
Don't you think that the stable income of a person working at a supermarket, for example, is much more than the 99% that are pursuing these kinds of musicians and like these kinds of careers and not selling at all?
So I'd like to answer that question in my second argument. So what is a realistic characterization of those who pursue what they love? So government claim is that only limited number of people can realize their dreams. That's a rare case. Not true. I would like to give you 3 analyses. 1, we are not saying that everyone should be YouTuber or celebrity, but there are more realistic options that you can pursue. The number of freelancers has been increasing and getting more popular. For example, freelance journalist, freelance engineer, web programmer, web designer, stylist, hair makeup artist, nailist, dancer, a marriage matchmaking consultant, right? Are they super rich? Maybe not. Are they really poor? Maybe not. But they spent reasonable and decent middle-class life, and it's enough. As long as they are less stressed, less depressed, and enjoy what they do, I think that's a better alternative form of happiness that we can realistically pursue in this modern society. So these examples show that stable income source and pursuit of what they dream about are not mutually exclusive. These are compatible in many cases. Secondly, with the analogy of love, many companies now have a commercial incentive to provide services and platform which enables individuals to monetize what they love. There are YouTube, TikTok, and online salon. Why? Because companies realize that now in the age of pursuit of what they like, people have better incentive to publicize their identity and hobby. So companies provide services in accordance with this trend. If this commercial trend continues, even people with small followers can monetize their hobbies and personality, thereby expect some form of stable income. So in this commercial trend, we can better No, thank you. Thirdly, in a long term, let me engage with the worst case scenario. I think the worst case scenario presented by the government bench is that people regret their decisions if they fail. No, if you repeatedly make decisions by thinking of your own life, the quality of self-judgment improves in a long term because you constantly make decisions in your daily life, in daily basis, in monthly basis, in weekly basis, in annual basis. So you are now used to make decisions about your own life. And the government paradigm is that what happened is that when you become 42 years old, now you want to quit company. Now you want to start pursuing your real dream, like opening cafe in a local area. But now you don't know what to do with because you're not used to making decisions in the first place. So this is what we call middle age crisis that a lot of Japanese salarymen are facing right now. They have been working in one company for a long time, pursuing they are socially expected to do, but now they have a dream, but they don't know what to do it because they're not used to making decisions. They are not independent mentally, and that's the scenario. So in a long term, even if I fail one time, then I can recover if I improve the quality of my own judgment. Final issue, can we really expect stability from government paradigm? Because main argument from the government is that stability is really, really important. 3 levels of counter analysis. Number 1, even large companies are subject to bankruptcy and external negative factors. AI, blockchain, and other technological advancements might replace manual labors or even intellectual labors. Large companies like banks and consultant firms announced massive layoff. Like the Deputy Prime Minister explained that you can gain transferable skills. I don't think so. In this age of rapid change, it's very risky to work in a large company for a long time, considering the fact that machinery might replace human beings. Secondly, from macroeconomic perspective, GDP growth is stagnated, unlike 50 years ago. So even if you become the employee of a large company, the salary and bonus is not much different from like freelance journalist and freelance programmer. So we cannot see qualitative distinction between their model and our model about the income and stable income source. Thirdly, about the mental stability, it's very fragile on government model because you have to do what you don't like. You have to undergo harassment. You have to play golf with your boss in a Saturday and Sunday. That undermine your mental stability and people are more likely to be depressed and oppressed on the proposition model. At least we can guarantee that sort of a mental stability and a mental happiness for a lot of people. We are happy to oppose. Thank you.
I start.
Yep, you can start.
Thank you. Rion said in her outro that money buys happiness. This itself shows the narrow limitations of government's thinking, because the idea that happiness is something to be bought is a myth by capitalist society to trap individuals into exploitative systems that only benefit the elite. Opposition believes that happiness should be lived, not bought, and that is why we win this debate. 3 issues I'm going to be talking about. Firstly and briefly, is money good? Second, even if it was good, is it accessible? Thirdly, addressing the possibility of failure, which is the main thing coming from the government. Firstly, is money good? Government was saying that money can buy happiness, and that's why you should get a job that gives you money. Note that this entirely hinged upon the idea that money can buy you happiness. And we think that we have expectedly countered this by showing you that you can have, that happiness can be gained not just through the capitalist means of exchange, but by doing something that makes you happy to begin with, such as cooking, such as making YouTube videos, such as being creative, such as being a beauty guru. We think all of these things are things that make people happy on their own by virtue of existing, by virtue of that being a profession, without having to buy something itself, without having to buy something to achieve that, right? Note that they were notoriously uncomparative with this, because we think the comparative coming from their side is that you struggle through a 16-hour workday that you don't even like, and then you spend the rest of those 8 hours doing something that you like, despite being like really tired, right? We think we give you a much better world in that sense, in that you can spend the entire 24 hours of the day doing something that you like. So we think that even if money was able to buy happiness, you should just live a happy life to begin with. That is what we have proven to you through all of the examples of the accessible passion economy that we've illustrated. The second issue is that even if money is good, is it in an accessible form to begin with? Because we think that the entire idea that money is good rests on the idea that people can have access to that money to begin with. Now, we've told you how the traditional success model relies on a zero-sum system of exclusion that favors the privileged elite only. The response coming from Rion was that it's not only the presidents of those companies that have money, the workers also have money too. But note that this never engaged with the actual nuance of her point, because what we were saying was that it's not that people are poor inside those companies, it's that people do not have entry into those companies to begin with, due to things like hiring and like bias in the employment process, due to things like cram schools being expensive and therefore people can't pay for them and therefore people can't get into the University of Tokyo, right? We think that as long as they haven't ignored they haven't responded to our analysis about the systematically exclusionary nature of these things, the panel has to make the judgment that these kinds of systems that make money are only available to 2% of the population. In comparison, we've shown you that the passion economy, like for example, being a creator on YouTube or TikTok, is available to anyone. Therefore, more people can have money. So even if we take them at the government's metric, more people can have money under our side. Therefore, you should vote for us. Now, government kept accusing us of a weird problem solution mismatch, which is that instead of abolishing the traditional success model, we should sustain it by having things like quotas or schools in rural areas. Now, they didn't explain any incentive for the profit-driven conservative companies to suddenly change and become inclusive. We don't think they have any due to the nature of them being like conservative to begin with. Also, as Michi said, it's not mutually exclusive to begin with, right? We can have those things in the first place. And even if we had all of those systems, just as government said, we don't think these like socially vulnerable people would be comfortable in these systems anyways, because they face things like harassment or implicit bias. The comparison given on our side was that we provide a form of happiness for everyone that does not depend on these elitist institutions to give them validation. We think that is a much better form of enfranchisement for these socially vulnerable people. Finally, and briefly, addressing the possibility of failure, because the government's entire case was like based on the idea that people being poor is bad, and therefore you should strive not to be poor. But we've told you that failure is good many times, because you're still likely to be happy because you did something that you love. You're likely to be satisfied because that failure is your own responsibility instead of something that is socially imposed upon you, like power harassment. Finally, you're more likely to practice better decision-making if you fail at a young age, because you can make more informed decisions in the future. All in all, we've proven to you that we protect more people and we protect more important people. Proud to oppose.
What we're not trying to protect today as government is what we're trying to protect today is not the narrative that money leads to happiness, or that the narrative do what leads to success. What we're trying to protect today is do what you're good at, do what brings you a stable, if moderate, a stable long-term happiness. Do what and not chase your short-term passions, as it will not lead you to any happiness. So the opposition side today has failed to recognize the severe status quo that is happening for people who try to follow their passions. So they completely ignored our analysis of the status quo, where people who want to become artists, who want to become sport players, who want to become musicians, or who want to start a company, these people, they either fail and are unemployed, or they face severe consequences, like all of their social ties are cut, or they have this constant mental burden that they have to find food to put on the table the next day, or the burden that they are not good enough to succeed. Who we are trying to what we're trying to prevent from happening is, for example, an untalented artist whose wife and children have left them. They have alcoholism. They hate their own art because that is the reason of all their misery. They have depression, but they don't have the money to take medicine or therapy. No self-confidence. These are the types of situations that are actually happening right now. And we believe that opposition has completely failed to acknowledge this reality. So moving on, first, we would like to say that there was a burden of proof for the opposition side to prove how people succeed in the passion economy. They said that the passion economy can involve all types of people, even minorities, and that through YouTube or TikTok, they can succeed. However, this sort of prejudice, bias, racism, it still exists in society. It is a social construct and not something that only exists in universities or in workplaces. And we say that even in the genre of YouTube or TikTok, for example, it's because it's humans that see these types of things and who and is the audience, we say that this will still not change. And there is a very, very, very low chance of succeeding, for example, on YouTube. Think of how many channels have 0 followers and 0 views on their videos. It's not like everyone can become like Kim Yo. And we say that they did not prove this burden of how on opposition paradigm, these people will actually succeed in when pursuing their passion. So we have 3 questions that I want to answer today. First is whether this which side can save the minority, which side can save the minority. The main unique benefit of opposition's paradigm was that they can involve these minorities and that the current system is exclusive. However, what we are trying to push today is not that everyone should go to Harvard and get into the top 500 companies. What we're trying to say is that compared to a struggling artist or a struggling musician, going to a normal university, going to a normal company, even being at the bottom of a normal corporation is much, much more stable and much better than having this life where you pursue your passion. Second question, whether money can buy you happiness. Well, our main point is not that materialistic things bring you happiness. It's more that money is the option that money is the only thing that can allow you to focus on other things, on your hobbies, on your friends, on your families. And it is also money that can widen your paths in your life. And the third question, whether passion automatically leads to happiness. So opposition said that even if you don't succeed while following your passion, if you, for example, draw art every day, do sports every day, you are automatically happy because that is what you want to do. However, we have explained that jobs and hobbies are a different thing. You can't always do what you want, draw what you want to draw, cook what you want to cook. It also means that this passion that you once loved is the thing that is bringing you this agony, this poverty that made your wife leave. And we believe that this means that passion is no longer a source of happiness for that person anymore. We also believe that we uniquely are able to protect people who don't have a passion, as we can alleviate the pressure that they face from a young age to have a dream even before exploring other possibilities. And because we are able to protect these 2 actors, we are very, very proud to propose. Thank you.
なんか全体的なリフレクありますか？これ落としてたよとか、やばいよとか。
Luana先輩。
いいよ、Mitsushi先輩がどうぞ。
ちょっと、Luana先輩。
まあなんか、if I should do it, like, I'll just say my own console. Like, ミッシー先輩、先に話しちゃった方がいいですか、それとも。
先に話してください。
Okay, okay. I think this is like WSDZ 2020, right? Anyways, I think like like points aside, I feel like you could have had maybe some more accurate rebuttals. Especially because I think we tried to give a lot of analysis about how the traditional success model is really exclusionary. And I think the main thing that you gave us in response to that was that, but you don't solve anything either. Like well, it was more like there are better options to do this, such as like quotas or building schools in rural areas. Like I feel like that doesn't really engage with the core of the argument because it doesn't tell us why we're wrong. It doesn't tell us like why our solution is bad. It just gives us like a better option, and you didn't really explain why it was better either.
Got it. Yeah.
So in that sense, I feel like you could have maybe deconstructed the argument a little bit better to make more accurate refutations.
Thank you. Got it. Yep.